A new study led by environmental scientists at Rice University's George R. Brown School of Engineering finds agriculture emissions can pose a serious risk to our health and our climate. And joining us to talk about it this morning is the study's lead author, Dr. Daniel Cohan, Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Doctor, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Thanks for spending some time with us. I guess first off, can you break down what kinds of pollution and climate impacts we're talking about here from agriculture, farming and whatnot?
First of all, I'll say that a lot of this work was done by my graduate student, Lena Luo, who really did terrific work on this paper. And what we found is that, yes, agriculture is an important and often overlooked source of air pollution and of gases that warm the climate. Usually when we think of air pollution, we think of cars, we think of refineries, we think of power plants. But what we found is that when we use too much fertilizer on soils, some of those compounds in the fertilizer end up entering the air and both warming the climate and contributing to air pollution.
So what kinds of pollutants are we talking about? I mean, what does that exactly cause, I guess, in the air?
Right. So there are two specific pollutants that come out that end up forming other types of pollution in the air. One of them forms ozone smog. So when we hear on the weather forecast on your station and others that there's an ozone smog alert, that ozone forms from two different ingredients. And one of them is nitrogen oxides. And a substantial amount of nitrogen oxides actually come out of fertilized soils. The other contributor to air pollution is a gas called ammonia. And ammonia is a gas, but when it reacts with other things in the atmosphere, it can turn into microscopic particles. And those particles are actually the deadliest form of air pollution. So agriculture on its own isn't causing all these problems, but what we're finding is it is a major contributor.
Interesting. I mean, I guess what comes to mind for me, carbon dioxide, methane, and that sort of thing. Why is it that maybe we don't hear more about, was it nitrogen oxide and ammonium that you were mentioning? Why not?
Right. We don't hear about them because we've been thinking about soils as a way to soak up carbon from the air. But CO2, even though it warms the planet, it isn't all that potent molecule for molecule. Nitrous oxide is about 270 times as potent as CO2, and it lasts in the atmosphere for about a century, about 100 years. So when we release such a potent gas, even though it's not as concentrated as CO2, we're actually contributing to warming the planet for the next century. Whereas some of the schemes that are trying to hold more carbon in the soil, a lot of that washes away, a lot of that gets eaten up by bacteria and returns to the air very quickly. So what we're finding is that if we're putting more of this nitrous oxide into the air from fertilized soils, that can be a contributor to global warming overall.
What about the financial impact of these emissions?
Yeah, so we don't see it directly in our pocketbooks when we pay for groceries and crops, other things that we buy at H-E-B or Kroger's or the farmer's market. We're not paying for these pollution problems. But when our paper, we looked at what the dollar value is, we realized, well, if it's contributing to air pollution and it's contributing to health effects, and occasionally people needing to go to the hospitals or the warming that it's causing, the slight increase in temperatures that are coming from these emissions, those have a value to society. Those drive up our medical costs indirectly. Those end up leading to some of the damages we see from climate. And so what we found is that these impacts add up to, take them together, and they're in the tens of billions of dollars a year for U.S. fertilized agriculture overall.
I understand that you guys looked at different farming practices. Did you find some that were maybe more environmentally friendly than others?
Right. So what we're finding is most important is to not overuse fertilizer. Is that while fertilizer's been cheap, there's been a tendency to just apply as much as possible to be sure that we get crop yields as high as they can possibly be. But this shows how important it is to not overdo it, and for farmers to find ways that they're applying it at the right time, that they're using the most effective forms of fertilizer, and really doing the practices that they can have more of that nitrogen end up the crops where it contributes to food that we eat, rather than having excess go into the air or excess run off into the water.
So what would you logically pursue next? I mean, if we could write a blank check tomorrow based on what you guys have learned, where would you take this research, in which direction?
Yeah, we're really looking more in depth at those farming practices. One practice we're looking at is that there are some farmers who've started putting carbon added to soil. So sometimes it's called biochar, where material gets burned and becomes a carbon that can be added to soils. And that gets looked at as a way to hold more carbon in the soils. But what we want to do in our next study is we're going to be looking at, if we do those additions, is that a good thing for reducing these nitrogen pollutants, or is it a bad thing? Does it increase the pollutants? We really don't know. And I think that's, as scientists, what we get excited about the most is when we're doing research that we're really not sure where the answers will lead us.
So is that sort of the silver lining, is you see that it's not like we've done so much damage to crops we can't turn it around? What do you see maybe as a silver lining in the study?
Right. I mean, this shows a lot of opportunity to do good work and to make improvements. Crops are regrown every year or a couple seasons per year. And so every year there's a fresh opportunity to shift to better farming practices. And the EPA, others who think about air pollution, think about climate, have for the most part been ignoring agriculture. We've been focusing so much on cars and refineries and power plants. And this shows, yes, there may be some contribution from agriculture, but it's showing maybe there are ways that we can bring down those emissions, bring down that air pollution, bring down that contribution to warming. So I hope that it opens up opportunities to find new ways of making the air a little bit cleaner and the climate a little bit cooler.
Dr. Daniel Cohan, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.